Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is that you are viewing this, and welcome to another episode of Vanlife with Isaac in NYC. This is number 5 or something like it, so let's give it a go. We're just going to have a little bit of fun with this one. I'm just going to keep messing with this setup as well, if you can't tell, so hopefully you enjoy this setup. If you don't, no worries. I don't care. Today's episode hopefully will be a little bit shorter. I know I've been kind of long-winded in the last few. But I just made it through 2 of the coldest days there have been in NYC. Thankfully, I lived on a couch for one of them, and then I was able to be in here last night, but it wasn't too bad. But today, what we're going to really talk about is my experience on the cruise ship and how it led to this move to NYC. Because I know I get a lot of questions from people all the time about what I did on the cruise, even other performers, people just want to know. And, I'd love to answer that. So let's start with some questions I've gotten. This a little different format than how we've done before, but I want to try it out and see how it works. So the first question I get is, how long were you on the cruise ship? Even from people on the cruise. I was on the ship for 9 months to the day that I left. The contract itself was 9.5 months. So I started in New York at RWS Studios there in Long Island, Queens, and we were rehearsing for the show very quickly before we flew to Amsterdam, and we had dry dock in Amsterdam, which, if you don't know what dry dock is, essentially it's the ship is not in water and it's getting refurbished or repaired because it was a new ship to the fleet. We were living on one of the sister ships in the same dockyard, so we would start on one end of the dockyard and we'd take 15-minute walks to get to the other one, which we could only walk through a few of the hallways because everything's taped out and nothing's like suitable for walking, but we literally had to take the stairs, walk on this taped carpet to preserve the carpet, because that was one of the first things they did before building everything. Don't ask me why. But to the cabaret space, and in the cabaret space all the chairs were covered. You couldn't use anything. It was just kind of madness, but very cool nonetheless. And so I was there for 9 months doing 4 different shows, but we did an array of different things as well. And I will say that 9 months is a long time for anyone to be on a small luxury liner. How many passengers crew? So we had about 400 crew members. That's literally all that it could accommodate, no more. Some rooms were solo, some rooms were like up to 4 people in it. Which actually would be terrible. I shared with one of the other castmates, which it was two people. 2 of the performers had their own rooms, and then 4 of us shared with the other. And pretty much you stick to your performer base is who you live with. But you have about 400 crew, and then you also have around 692 passengers. So it's usually rounded up to 700, but you're never really going to have that many on because a lot of people will get solo rooms or buy a room for themselves, which can accommodate 2 to 3 people in each of these rooms. The suites are a different beast altogether. But yeah, you're looking at maximum. I think the biggest grouping we ever had on one ship was 630 guests. There were times on the cruise, especially in the beginning of 2022, where we only had like 200 guests on at a time, which, if you think about having 400 crew members to 200 guests, they were getting exceptional service. How many shows? What kind of shows did you do? I had 4 brand new shows that we brought to the ship, which was really cool. So we kind of set the precedent for how these shows will be done in the future, because 2 of our shows will be on the other 3 ships, and then 2 of them are local to just our ship. So we had like a 70s disco show. That was my personal favorite. It was the only one that I was actually in the room for with the choreographer. So shout out to Mark Kimmelman for that. But that was really cool. We did a rock show, which I'd never done rock before. We did a kind of like folk storytelling, had like Fleetwood Mac and a bunch of different artists like that, Simon and Garfunkel. And then we also did a like club show. So it was kind of like jazz American songbook shows, which was really cool too. Definitely like in my wheelhouse of the, what I've been singing my whole life. But my role was imp2. I was a baritone, so I generally had to sing the lower stuff. And so we had 4 shows, plus we had this like stylized night, which is kind of like a white night is what they call it, or bright night, whatever. I think it's pretty common on some ships, but essentially it's an hour and a half of nonstop music, so up to 33 songs at certain days. New Year's Eve we did almost 40 songs because we're up there for 2 hours, and just nonstop. So you got 6 orchestra members, and then you have the CD, the ACD, which CD stands for cruise director, ACD stands for assistant cruise director, as well as even our activity host came up and sang. We had our hotel director, who was a former cruise director, come up. He sang with his wife as well, who was just a passenger. But you never know how many people are actually going to be on that stage. But then you have the whole cast as well, and you got 2 dancers dancing, just kind of making it a fun show for everyone. It ended up being one of my favorite shows that we did, just in general, which was pretty cool. But sometimes we would perform like 6 days of a week. Some days we would only perform 4, just depending on the length of the cruise. Like a 15-day cruise, you got to spread us out, over that 15 days. And we have a variety show that we start the cruise with, and then we sometimes would help with certain cruise directors' shows where we do these silly little numbers that are like ABBA-inspired things or whatever. We also did like a Halloween-themed show, which was really cool as well. Shout out to Katie for the choreography on that one. And then we did a Christmas show or holiday show, whatever you want to call it, which was really cool. I'd say it was more Christmas than holiday, but c'est la vie. So you really don't know how many shows you're going to be doing, but overall for the 4 shows that we did do that were our signature shows, we probably only performed each of them like 50 times, maybe not even that much, which is kind of crazy because I come from touring, and even the equity houses I worked at, you do the same show 8 shows a week for 10 weeks, so you're hitting 80 shows minimum. So for me, this was kind of weird to not really do these shows to the nth degree, because some cruises you'd only do 2 of your 4 shows. You're not even performing all 4 shows, and a lot of people are shocked to find that. So you're not performing as much as you actually think you'd be. What were your duties other than performing? So with this specific cruise line that I was on, which if you want to message and talk about it, we can. It was a smaller brand, so they only have 4 ships. And with the small amount of crew, 400, I know it doesn't sound like a small amount, but it is. There's no activity staff. So you as the entertainment team double as the activity staff. So you have like a duty day, which is 3 trivias minimum, which is a morning trivia and 2 afternoon trivias, themed, and then music, and then just broad general trivia for the morning. And you also have these other activities, which a few physical activities, like they call it beanbag toss, which is just, God, terrible. But it's actually called cornhole. They have that, but they also have like a little golf putting, ring toss, bowling, random things like that, shuffleboard. We also have different activities like brain teaser activities, like anagrams, and like new cities versus old, or categories, games that you're familiar with that you'd play with your family. But we play it with these groups of people, and sometimes you'd have like 5 people show up. Other times you'd have 70. It just depends if it's like a sea day or not, where you're, at a sea day. You can assume, if you've never been on a cruise, that means you're at sea the entire day. Those days tend to be a little bit more crazy because you as a performer, you're probably not performing that night, but you have all these activities that you're doing instead, and you can't leave the ship. So it's just a whole process. Some days we are tendering and we need someone to distribute the tender tickets, so you have to sit and wait and give out tickets to everyone, and they're like, why can't I get off the ship? So you have to deal with like a little bit of customer service. You have to do doors, you have to do spotlights for other shows, like whenever guest performers or come on, things like that. And you do muster speeches, which is like 20 times or 25 times you have to tell people where to go in case of an emergency, what to do in case of emergency, how to wear a life jacket, things like that. Which these are good, if you're just trying to figure out how to be yourself and you think you're good at this kind of stuff. Because I feel like that was like the easiest thing for me after years of bartending, was doing like the activity portion of stuff. But I wasn't performing nearly as much as I wanted to be honest. I loved performing and I learned a lot, but yeah, you do a lot more activities, and I think that's a big factor you need to consider when doing big cruises. If you have questions about that, please let me know, because I can tell you which cruise lines that don't necessarily do that, etc., etc. Where did you sail to? So I had the wonderful experience of doing mostly Mediterranean, and then I stayed on because I extended, and so I got to do like the Caribbean as well. On this specific cruise, while I was there, I did 5 different continents, which was really cool. I only missed Antarctica and Oceania because we went to like Israel, and I got to eat a fish from the Sea of Galilee, which was fun if you're interested in that kind of stuff. I also got to go to Egypt. I got my cartouches from there, so that was a huge thing to go. We were in Alexandria, and then we drove up to Cairo for a little tour. Got to see the pyramids, things like these things that you have been wanting to do for forever. And I really got the opportunity to explore that and live that life, which was so cool. Italy, Greece, Slovenia, Montenegro, Monaco. We went to Cyprus. We went to Croatia, British Virgin Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands. We did Portugal, Spain, France. We did Gibraltar. We did South America. We did Cartagena, Colombia. I did Puerto Rico. We had some really cool opportunities to see like San Jose, the Dominican Republic as well. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, I would say now where I'm at in my current travel life, I've visited 35 countries, 5 continents, and I've done 45 out of 50 states. Unrelated to the cruising, but still pretty cool. And if you want to keep track of how you travel, there's a cool little app called Ben, B-E-E-N, and you can literally mark everywhere you've been, which is really cool. So I do suggest that. We spent a lot of time in Turkey as well. Sorry, I forgot to say that. Istanbul, oh my gosh. Terminal, terrible. But the place, really cool. Huge city, massive. What was your favorite port? That's so hard. I hate when people ask me this question because there's no real good. There isn't a proper answer. Each port has something different to offer. My favorite that I think that I always looked forward to the most was Kotor, Montenegro. It's a very small little country, and they call it a fjord, but it's not quite a fjord the way that you kind of sail into this area, but it's like a little bay, and just what you can do is hike, and you can be up, several hundred feet very quickly because it's not a very big area, but it's a good place for working out, exercising, all these cool things. Loved Kotor, Montenegro. Croatia, just as a whole, the country is gorgeous. You must go visit Croatia. If you didn't know where Dalmatians the dog are from, they're from Dalmatia, Croatia, which is kind of like 4 different city kind of areas together, or like suburban areas together. They call it Dalmatia. But Croatia is very cool. If you need any recommendations for Mediterranean spots to go, I can name 1,000 of them. Took my family to several. They came on a cruise where we went to 5 different countries in like 8 days. So, man. But Kotor is definitely the place. Good eats, good scenery. Always found something to do every time I went. And last but not least, would you do it again? Maybe not for that cruise line, as much as I felt like I succeeded and I was given so many opportunities. It's really it came down to the activities portion. I want to be a performer. I know I'm a performer. So I'd want to do like a different cruise line, I think. The issue with other cruise lines, though, is you're going to the same ports for like 6 months at a time. So for you got to decide if you want new ports all the time, but activities, or if you want to just perform, have lots of off days, but go to the same ports all the time and have tons of sea days. That's some of the issues of going to some of the bigger cruise lines. Well, anyway, somehow this has still been long-winded. I don't know how. I feel like I'm trying to get through these things zippy quick. But thank you for coming by. If you have any questions about that, I mean, it's kind of cool to see how like this cruise industry and like this amount of performing, like what I was doing and style of performing, really made me feel like now I can walk in any room, sing anything, any type, any style, and I have all of this stuff ready to go now because of that contract. So if you're a performer looking to really expand your resume or expand like just your repertoire, do it. Do a cruise line. Get the chance. Like mine was through RWS. You can do yours through whoever. I'm sure that there are tons of casting people out there. But do a cruise if you are trying to get a bunch of rep, get that style worked through,